Welcome to Mom's Writers Club. Sarah, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are doing a quick episode on the 10 things you must do before you start querying your novel.
You must do them. Oh,
You
I'm
must
Jessica, by the way. What's your name?
And I'm Sarah. Welcome to Mom's Writers Club.
Give us a like and a subscribe, please, and we're going to dive right in.
Okay, number 1, finish your book.
So many people try to query an unfinished book, and I get it. Like, it's if you haven't like been told not to do that, you would never know, right? But you have to finish your book, at least for a fiction novel. You have to finish it. The agent that you're going to query wants to know that you can actually finish the book.
Right. And they might ask you to send them the book. Like, if you're querying your book and they are considering representing you, they are going to want to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
And B, it may not take them very long. I've seen a lot of people who are like, I started querying. I wasn't quite done, but I just thought it was going to take forever and I would have time to finish.
Yeah. And you know what? Yeah.
You may get your first full request in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
They may be like, great, send me the manuscript. And then you're like, oh.
Yes. And I know people that have happened to where they had like finished their rough draft, but they hadn't revised it yet. And they started querying. I've known people who didn't finish their book. My fastest full request ever was 12 hours.
Yeah.
Like
Mine was overnight.
All the time. So do not query that until it is written and moving
ready
on
to
to
go.
step 2.
Revise your book. Do not query a first draft. You are just, you're just like, you're not giving yourself a chance if you do that.
Yeah.
You know, like you gotta because then you'll query that book. It's a first draft. It's really rough. Agents will say no. And then you'll come back later and you'll be like, oh, I really should have revised that. And now I've worked on it and it's so much better, but I've already queried these 40 agents and now I can't send it back to them. And you know?
Yeah. And that's the other thing I was going to say is once you've gotten a rejection from them, like that's it. Like you can withdraw a query, but like sometimes they don't see that you've withdrawn it and you don't want to waste your chance with those agents.
Yeah.
And you don't want to waste their time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can query them with your next book, but you can't, and then I see a lot of people saying like, well, can I like re-query the same book if I've made like significant revisions? And it's usually kind of a tepid yes, like if it's been more than 6 months and they're really substantial revisions, but better to do all the awesome revising in the beginning.
Yeah. Send out a book you're really proud of and that you feel confident in and that you've taken enough of a break that you can see it with relatively clear eyes, which I know is hard to do, but that you feel good about.
Yeah. And that leads us to our next point is have other people read your book. This is number 3 of 10.
Yeah. And these people need to be not related to you. And I know that beta readers and critique partners are hard to find, but you have to work at it. Like Sarah was not the first critique partner I had. I had many before her that just did not work out long-term.
Yeah.
You will find them, but you have to invest the time and the energy into finding them. You need other people to read your work and not people who are going to tell you that they love it because they love you. I would go so far as to say if they have nothing negative to say, and by negative, I mean constructive criticism, that might be a sign that like they might be a wonderful reader, but they're potentially not a good critique partner.
Yeah.
Some of my like very earliest experiences, it's like you're paired with newer writers because you're a newer writer and everybody just wants to be nice to everyone. And you also don't know as much about writing yet, you know? And I remember getting feedback that was all positive. And I look back now and I'm like, I know that book wasn't very good. I know there were and it's not anybody's fault. I'm not blaming them, but just, you need to find someone who's not afraid to say, I love this, but this needs work,
Right. Right. I mean, no matter how good I get at this, I always feel like I want somebody who's going to be like, who's going to have some way that I can make it better.
Yeah.
So definitely have to let other people read your work. You're just not giving yourself the best shot if the agent is the first person besides you who has ever read your book.
Or your mom.
Yeah.
Okay. Next step.
Okay. 4. Oh no, we're on number 4.
Do your homework on query writing. I have seen so many query letters where the person thinks it is like a cover letter for getting a job, or they think it is their job to like give a full biography. Like there's so much absolutely free information on the internet about how to write a good query letter. There's just no excuse. There
And
are
we'll link
great,
some of it down below
yeah,
in the notes.
there are some great YouTube channels on it. If you just Google how to write a query letter, you will find so many articles with sample query letters.
Yeah.
Like, yes,
If you
that
go to Jane
right.
Friedman's blog, like she has got like
Yeah.
the definitive post on how to write a query letter. It's great.
Yes. And writing a query letter is a skill that you get better at, but you should at
It is a
least
different skill than writing a book, unfortunately.
you should at least be able to like do a baseline one in the correct format, including the correct things. And
Yeah.
it's just not hard to find that.
Yeah,
And
you can learn how to
it's
do
always
that
amazing to
online.
me when people don't look it up at all ahead of time.
Oh, you're like, just plug that into Google and you'll
Yeah.
be all set. And
And
then
then
when you have written said query letter,
mhm.
you have to have other people read your query letter before you
Yeah.
send it off. Don't let the agent be the first person to ever lay eyes on your query letter besides you.
Yeah, and it should be people who have read your book, but also people who have not read your book. Someone who has not read your book will catch that something does not make sense, that someone who has read it, like they just mentally fill in the gaps because they already know how the plot works.
Right.
So make sure that you have some people who have not read it also read that query letter to make sure that it makes sense. I would also say, if you can afford it, getting a couple of critiques from either agents who do that for 20 or $30, or there are a few authors who have done their own rounds of querying and will do it for $20. It's well worth getting someone who's a few steps ahead of you to put eyes on that. They can really
Absolutely.
up the quality. And if that's the first thing or the only thing an agent reads, you want it to be really good.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot at stake in that one page. So, along with having other people read your query, then you need to revise your query, just like you revised your manuscript, right? Don't send out a first draft query. You're just not like giving yourself the best chance there.
You need to make it look pretty, and you also need to read it out loud, because I swear I sent out my first query after doing all of these things we've been talking about, and there was a misspelled word in the first sentence, and like 5, 6, 7 people looked at this query besides me, and I probably like introduced the error in my last round of revisions. And I remember just being like, are you fucking kidding me? I still got the request, but that's not the point. Don't do what I did. Also, pro tip, when you're typing the agent's name in, because you're like, you have your query letter and then you're putting it in, and then you're like, adding all your specifics, make sure autocorrect does not change how that name is spelled, because I definitely typed in a name with multiple N's and T's, and they definitely all got switched around as I hit send, and
you're just like,
you're kidding me. So I immediately replied and was like, I swear to God, I know how to spell your name. That was autocorrect, but I felt like an idiot. And they also never replied to me.
Oh, that sucks. Now, just like parenthetical after this one, if you do send out a query with a typo, do not freak out. If your query's great and your book is great, like the agent is going to overlook the typo.
They might not even notice the typo.
They might not even notice, and it's not the end of the world. They're like,
yeah,
LOL,
most agents
we've all
say
done that.
Yeah, most say it's no big deal. Now, if there are 3 typos and you misspelled their name, they might consider that a little unprofessional. So do your best.
Exactly. Yeah. Next is number 6. Figure out what your genre is or where your book fits on the shelf.
This is a really important topic. And even people who know how to write query letters, I see do this. I hate to call it wrong, but it's wrong. In the world of querying, it's just wrong. Now, you may have a high fantasy science fiction romance. I believe you. However, that's not a genre that is in a bookstore on a bookshelf. So go to the bookstore and figure out where your high fantasy romance, so whatever that thing I just said is, where it would go. Would it go in science fiction? Would it go in romance? That is how you need to query it. Now, I have heard it suggested that you can say, like, I have a science fiction with romantic elements or a romantic
Mhm.
subplot. Some agents are kind of like, I don't care. I don't need to know about that. Others are like, it doesn't bother me, you know?
Right.
And if they're reading your query letter, they're going to get that just from reading the query letter. But
Right.
your genre, it needs to be an actual genre that you could find in a bookstore, not the fusion of 3 genres that your book actually is.
Right. Right. Just pick one. Honestly, the agent will figure it out. If it's a great story and, and they're hooked, then they'll be like, oh, yeah, I could sell this as whatever, whatever, So
Yeah.
just pick one. And
And
do not be like, my book has no genre
oh, yeah, don't do that.
because it's like so special and unique.
You can also play
That's
with
like,
this a
I'm
little
gonna sell you a car, but I'm not gonna tell you what color it is.
bit. um,
Sorry.
you can also play with this a little bit. Like when I was querying one of my books, it was like a thriller, but also technically could have been suspense,
Mhm.
which some people will argue that, if you do your Venn diagram, there's a whole lot of overlap, which there is. But some agents will specifically say, I represent suspense, but they won't list mystery. So I would query them and say it was a suspense
Yeah,
novel.
likewise.
You can kind of narrow it down to that, but don't lie. Like if you're going
Yeah,
to do that, it should actually truly be able to fit within both genres.
yeah, totally.
Okay, next up, know your comps. This is a
Oh,
great one.
comps
I know they're hard,
suck.
but you know
They
what?
suck, but you have to do it.
I didn't use comps for my first 2 books, and I got a total
Yeah,
of 1 request between both books, and I started using comps, and a lot of other things changed too.
yeah,
And my request went way up. I
yeah.
think that having good comp titles,
It's helpful.
yeah, it's so helpful. And I know they're hard. There's a great group on Twitter called hashtag comps and prompts.
No,
Or is
prompts
it
and
prompts and
comps.
comps?
Prompts and
Yeah,
comps.
and they will
We'll
help
link it
you.
down below.
So yeah, some of our friends run that. There are, I think, we've talked about this in a different episode. One of the best things you can do is turn off, go to like a private browser and search for 1 or 2 books you think are similar and see what else pops up under their recommendations. Like that can be really helpful. But I also find it gets easier to come up with the proper comp titles when you're reading a little bit more in your genre. There's
Mhm.
a comp title out there for 99% of books. And I too at one point thought there was no comp, and I was wrong. There
Yeah,
were many comps. I just hadn't read enough in my genre to figure out what they were.
yeah. You
Sarah,
can
you had a really
also,
good suggestion.
well, what I liked doing was on my Kindle, I would download the sample version of books that I thought might be similar to mine. And that gives you a couple chapters. It gives you enough to get a feel for the voice and the writing and whether it might be a good comp. A lot of them I just didn't buy because I didn't think they were right. But the ones that felt like they might be a good comp, I bought and read, and they were great. And the thing is, not every single agent cares about comps, but enough of them do that if you are going, if you're going out there to query, you should know what your comps are. You shouldn't have to figure
Definitely.
them out on the fly.
I also got great suggestions from some of my critique partners who were also like within my own genre. They had good
Mm-hmm.
ideas.
Yeah. Like people who had read your book and are like, oh,
Yeah.
I think that book is like this other book. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll link below. We have a whole episode on finding comp
Yeah.
titles, so we won't go into any more detail
Yep.
here. Oh gosh, I don't want to talk about the next one. It's so
I
painful.
know. It's so painful. The synopsis. You're like, ugh.
Write the synopsis and do it before you query, because you're going to think to
Yeah.
yourself, and I saw so many people do this, well, I'm only going to query agents who don't want a synopsis.
Yeah, don't do that.
The thing is, at some point, someone who didn't ask for a synopsis is going to request your full with a synopsis. I
Right,
guarantee
right.
you it's going to happen.
Right.
And you will lose out on so many good agents if
Oh yeah,
you don't
I mean
have.
there may be
At
some
some point, you're
agent
going to
who's,
have to write it.
yeah, you just have to do it. You have to suck it up and do it.
It's
And it's going to be
painful and awful.
awkward and feel boring and stupid
And
and
it is boring, but that's okay. Your
yeah.
synopsis it's not supposed to be exciting. And just have someone read it, make sure it makes sense. Again, have someone
Yeah.
who's read the book and someone who hasn't read the book. Just spend a few hours, a few days.
You got to do it.
Yep.
Okay. And then this one I love.
I love this one too, and it's so much easier
This
said
was-
than done.
Yeah.
Stop the desperation. No agent is better than a bad agent. The right agent is out there.
Like not having an agent is better than having a bad agent.
So I know it's hard. I get it. I was there for several years. I know you want it so badly, and I get all of that, but you don't want an agent who's going to ruin your chances with publishers. You don't want an agent who you're not sure when you're ever going to hear from them. You don't want an agent who's not really an agent, who like has no agenting experience, who's not actually going to help you get published, not because they don't mean well, but because they just don't know what they're doing. Like,
Or who asks you for money up front.
yeah, do your
Just don't do
research on
that.
how to
Yeah.
find a good agent. Writer Beware is a great resource. They have a lot of information for that. You can Google that.
Right.
Victoria Strauss, Strauss on Twitter is great at that. Just take a deep breath.
Yeah. And
And
know your value.
yeah,
The only reason that anybody makes money in publishing is because authors write books. And that is you and us writing books. And we are where the value is. You know, agents are looking for that. They are hoping to find that in their slush pile, you know? That's a huge part of the fun of the job, you know, is like finding some like wonderful thing in their inbox, you know, and that might be you. So like just
yeah,
like remember you're where the value is.
definitely. And it's normal that it takes a while to get an agent, that it takes a long time to get an agent, that it takes years and multiple manuscripts.
Hmm.
That is the norm. I
Yeah.
know that we hear all the stories about the person who gets published and is a New York Times bestseller with their first book, with like the second agent they queried, but that is
Yeah.
not the norm.
Like,
It
oh my
took
God, it took
me,
me 3 weeks to write this book. And
yeah, it took me 4 books and several years. Sarah,
yeah.
how many books and years did it take you?
Oh, 3 books and probably 5 or 6 years.
On average, what I hear is it's someone's fourth or fifth book, and it usually takes like 5-ish years, give or take a
Hmm.
year or two. And for some people, it takes longer. For some people, it takes a year, but don't compare yourself to that. Like, it's going to take as long as it takes. And
Hmm.
I know it's hard, but for our last tip on the things you should do before you query is to dial in your mindset about this.
Yeah.
What is your ultimate goal with it? Expect rejection. You are going to get rejected. If you are just now getting ready to query your first book, I guarantee you are going to get rejections. They are not personal. It is
Yeah.
not about you as a person. It might not even be that they don't like your book. It might just be that they're not representing that genre right now, or they just already represent someone who wrote a similar book. There are all kinds of reasons it could be, and it's just part of it. We are big proponents of aim for 100 rejections a year, and there's a whole episode about it. We can link to you below.
And like we're big proponents of controlling what you can control
Mhm.
and not getting hung up on what you can't control. You can't control whether an agent loves your book. You know, like I'm going to get an agent this year uh isn't a goal that's within your control, right?
Nope, but you
I'm
can
going to
finish
send
that
out
book.
100 queries this year, or I'm going to
Yeah.
send out whatever. That's a goal that's within your control, right? That is going to make you put yourself out there. You're going to be creating opportunities for yourselves.
Can I add a bonus thing to do before you query?
Absolutely not.
Find yourself some writing friends and a writing community so that when you get rejections, you have someone to talk to about it, and you have
Yeah.
someone to be sad with, but also excited with when you get, your first request.
Yeah.
Twitter is a great place. I know it's big, but the writing community is very welcoming. So I highly encourage it. Moms Writers Club is a great place. Everybody's really wonderful. We accept non-moms as well. Everyone's welcome as long as you're nice and respectful and not a douchebag. We'd love to have you. Anyway, I think that's
All
all we've
right.
got for
Yep.
you today, but thanks
That's
for
1 through
joining
10.
us. Yeah, and the bonus. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at author Just Payne.
And I'm at Sarah Reed Author. And every other week we have our Moms Writers Club chats.
Yeah, and we have
We'll link
writing
that below.
sprints occasionally when we have time for them.
I
We'll
know,
do
we
more
need-
soon.
Yeah.
And then we have this channel, which has all kinds of good information, including a lot more about the querying process and how to write a query letter and all of that. So take a look around. Anyway, please give us a like and subscribe, and we will see you again soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.